Shane Steichen interviewed as head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and Jim Irsay breaks the internet. It is the locker room, number one source for daily Texans digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can find me on here. Subscribe, like, ride along, whether you're a Texans fan or not. This is your number one go-to for Texans news, reaction, etc. You can also hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610, home of the Texans, where we talk to players, coaches, owners, all that type of stuff. The Colts made a hire, and it's connected to the Texans in more ways than one. Shane Steichen is going to be the head coach in Indianapolis, and a lot of people I respect, a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of people, media types, wanted Shane Steichen to be the head coach for the Texans. Offensive-minded league, you need an offensive-minded coach in today's NFL. That's what you most frequently heard. And the biggest knock on DeMeco Ryans, despite all of the appeal, has been, well, he's not an offensive coach. You need someone who can work with quarterbacks. You need an offensive guy. Shane Steichen, his resume, if you look at all the guys that the Texans interviewed, Sean Payton obviously has his experience with Drew Brees. But if you were never in on Sean Payton and you never really wanted Sean Payton, which that's me, Shane Steichen was probably the best option along with Mike Kafka. Now, Mike Kafka just has 1 year away from Andy Reid. It was an impressive year, made Daniel Jones serviceable, brought the Giants up from bottom of the league in offense to the middle. And eventually, if he has another year like that, Mike Kafka is going to be a head coach. But Shane Steichen, his experience with Phillip Rivers, his experience with Justin Herbert, his experience with Jalen Hurts, he was a very popular candidate in Indianapolis for all the mocking, for all the jokes, for all the Saturday stuff. Indianapolis appears to have made a solid hire, at least on the surface. Obviously, we'll see it play out. But if you were grading Indianapolis, hiring Shane Steichen and arriving to that point, no matter how stressful I'm sure it was for Indianapolis Colts fans, you got to give them an A. And Texans fans, I think, realize that. I don't want to say there's fear, but there was hope from Texans' point of view that they would screw up the hire and maybe it would be Jeff Saturday or something like that. But they got Shane Steichen, and I think you got to like this. The other interesting thing about it is now you're going to have DeMeco and Shane Steichen going toe-to-toe 2 times a year for as long as their head coach. This is going to be a direct comparison to 2 of the top candidates. That's exciting. Indianapolis probably a little ahead of the Texans when it comes to building a roster, but that can all change depending on what happens at the top of the draft, specifically when it comes to the quarterback position. Does Indianapolis go the veteran route, or does Indianapolis decide to take a quarterback at 4? And could they trade up? They discussed all possibilities. Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay were up there, and the internet broke when Jim Irsay talked about Bryce Young. Unsolicited, brought up Bryce Young. Now, it is lying season. Jim Irsay, maybe just a little bit of gamesmanship. Heck, maybe Jim Irsay just blabbed and said something he shouldn't say, but a lot of people automatically reacted. Texans fans who want Bryce Young, don't want Bryce Young, hope that the Colts trade up to number 1, take Bryce Young, and then the Texans can take C.J. Stroud or something else. And Texans fans who do want Bryce Young lived in fear because the possibility of Indianapolis trading up, assuming they like Bryce Young, and stealing the Texans franchise quarterback became at least a slight possibility. I do think there's some gamesmanship here. I don't even know if Indianapolis knows what quarterback they like. But Shane Steichen was asked about quarterback traits, which is an interesting question because he hasn't worked with one certain type of quarterback. So you can't really use the process of elimination and assume that he wants this type of guy or that type of guy. He worked with Rivers, he worked with Herbert, and he did a good job with Jalen Hurts. But he said unsolicited and just very quickly, the traits that he likes in a quarterback are accuracy, decision-making, and the ability to create. Now, maybe that can change. Maybe he watches tape and thinks that, this guy wasn't as accurate as you'd want him to be in college. And we can find ways to improve that. A lot of coaches don't think you can teach accuracy. Shout out to Mike Leach. Rest in peace. But when I heard this, I automatically took Will Levis off the list. So it immediately came back to Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. Are those the 2 quarterbacks that the Colts are deciding between Stroud and Young, which are the 2 most popular names that come up around here. It's going to be an interesting battle leading up to the draft. It's going to be interesting to hear what Chicago thinks about all this. And if the Colts do decide to trade up, and heck, if the Texans think that the Colts like Bryce Young, do the Texans decide to trade up? What would that price be? Would it be a 1 next year and maybe a 3? I know we've talked about 1998 when the Chargers traded up 1 spot to get Ryan Leaf. Didn't go well, but they had to give up a 2. And 2 1s, the switch picks from 3 to 2, and then a first rounder in the next year's draft. What would the price be? Or does it even matter? What if the Texans don't like Bryce Young? We don't know that. But the sad truth about this whole thing, and it kind of sucks because everything's been going good so far. There's good vibes. You got D'Amico Ryans as the head coach. Texans fans are as excited as they've been in a long, long time. The sad truth here is it really shouldn't matter who Indianapolis likes. Shouldn't mean a damn thing because the Texans should have had that number 1 pick. Brandon Cooks should have never been on the field. Brandon Cooks cost the Texans the number 1 pick. Not blaming him. Go out there and play hard, except when you don't want to and you need to go away from the team for a while because you're upset that Jack got traded. But Nick Caserio should have never allowed Brandon Cooks on that football field in Indianapolis. Quite frankly, probably shouldn't have been on the field against the Tennessee Titans, but because of that, now the Texans do not have full control of the draft. So whether they like Bryce Young and the Colts like Bryce Young and the Colts trade up and take their guy, whether they like CJ Stroud and Carolina trades up and takes CJ Stroud, or if they don't like a quarterback at all, let's say they want Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. If the Bears decide to do that, the Texans aren't in full control of this draft. And that's the sad reality. It sucks. Hopefully they get their guy. I'm a Bryce guy. Some people are CJ guys. Some people are don't draft a quarterback guy. Hell, there's even like a small population of run it back with Davis Mills guys. But the sad reality is we shouldn't even be having this discussion. It shouldn't be about what Indianapolis is going to do, what Chicago wants to do, who's calling Chicago, who Jim Irsay likes. Biggest mistake. And it could be a costly one. It could all work out. We all hope it does. But it sucks that the Texans don't have control of this draft. And the biggest nightmare ever would be if the franchise quarterback in this draft, and usually there's maybe 1 or no franchise quarterbacks at all. The odds are if that guy goes number 1 and the Texans are unable to do that because Brandon Cooks was able to, for lack of a better term, punk Nick Caserio, that sucks. So congrats to the Colts on a hell of a hire. I know it's been stressful. A lot of Texans. I was open to Josh McCown last year just because why not? A lot of Texans dread the ride that they were on with the McCown train. A lot of Colts feel like they were on that roller coaster with Jeff Saturday, and it almost became a permanent thing. So they avoid that. They get Shane Steichen. Good for them. Bad for the people of Houston. They need a quarterback. Who's that quarterback going to be? Could it be Bryce Young? Could it be CJ Stroud? Could it be Will Levis? Could it be Anthony Richardson? That's to be determined. But it's going to be a very, very fun ride. It's already fun around here. Now, Texans, Colts, 2 first-year coaches, probably 2 young quarterbacks. And the next era of Texans football has even more storylines than it already did. Subscribe to the channel, spread the word, spread the love. There's a lot of people doing really good digital work when it comes to the Houston Texans. I'm biased. I think this is the top one. This is the most consistent. Follow along on Sports Radio 610 from 6A to 6P. Most importantly, 10 to 2 show of record in the loop on Sports Radio 610 with myself, Figgy Fig, and John Lopez. And enjoy this. It's there's really no off season in the NFL anymore. There kind of is, but there kind of isn't. We are 4 weeks away, less than 4 weeks away from the start of free agency. We are 10 weeks and change away from the draft. The combine's going to begin. There's going to be all types of cuts. There's going to be mini camps. And before we know it, the Texans are going to be at training camp. And we'll be right there on the sidelines. We'll be broadcasting live. Going to have all the interviews with the players, coaches, ownership, GMs, all that on Sports Radio 610. And we'll bring it right here to you. digitally. No matter what happens, though, no matter what the Colts do, no matter if Shane Steichen is great, no matter if he's awful, no matter if they like Bryce Young, no matter if they don't, we are all in this. When it comes to this Texans game, we are all in this together. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.